Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'm Dr. John Arns. A little bit more about myself in a second here. Feeling the female body from early adulthood and beyond. We're going to talk all about how to optimize and support the female body nutritionally and in other ways. So if you're someone that's dealt with, PMS issues, hormonal issues, menopause issues, things that are obviously very common in today's world, this information will be very valuable for you. And obviously the human body is really complex, and with females it's almost even a step higher as far as complexity goes, unfortunately for the females watching this. But there's definitely ways to improve your health, to get help with those hormonal issues, and just to optimize the function of the female body. So we'll dive into that here in a second. I'm going to switch my screen up. There we go. A little bit more about who I am. So maybe you've seen me in some of the previous videos. I'm Dr. John Arns. I'm a structural chiropractor by trade. Got my doctorate in chiropractic and my bachelor's in human biology. As a structural chiropractor, I focus on structural correction of the spine and the nervous system. And with that, getting a lot of people that come in with chronic health challenges that have maybe tried more traditional methods and are just looking for a different approach. I'm also a member of the Weston A. Price Foundation. And that organization, our goals are using traditionally prepared, nutrient-dense foods to help the body heal and function optimally. Is the simplest way to put it. And we're going to talk quite a bit about nutrition and its impact in the female body and the hormonal system. And the reasons we see the people we do in our clinic, people dealing with chronic health issues and are, looking for a different option and getting success we do with those people, is because we operate with a different underlying approach and philosophy and ideology. And it's one of salutogenesis. Salutogenesis is an approach focusing on factors that support human health and well-being rather than on factors that cause disease. So really, we're looking at everything we can do to help the human body heal and function more optimally, not necessarily focusing on the symptoms or trying to manage or treat symptoms. I mean, that approach is needed at times, but more the long-term philosophy with the human body, the approach as far as supporting it with everything we can do emotionally, nutritionally, chemically, physically, all those things. If we can support the body properly, we're going to create a healthy body. When you have a healthy body, you're going to minimize disease and secondary conditions and the symptoms associated with an unhealthy body. All right, so here's the overview of how I want to present this information here. Mastering the complexity of the female body and hormonal system, starting with step one, healing the gut. And if you've seen some of the videos prior to this one, I'm a big advocate of healing the gut, really with any disease process or any syndrome or condition that we identify or label. And that includes any female specific conditions, hormonal imbalances. We'll talk a little bit more about those, but start with healing the gut, and we'll talk about why that's important. Then we want to eliminate and reduce the enemies, so the things that are bad for our bodies, get rid of them out of our environment, out of our food, and with that, start to get inflammation down in our body and in our gut. And then three, we want to add in nutrient-dense foods, foods that are high in the nutrients that support our cells and our tissues to function optimally. And then lastly, we'll touch on complementary lifestyle additions to help heal and repair the body. So there's a lot of things we can do to help the body function better. And we'll talk more about those. So the reality of the female hormonal system, the reality of female hormonal health currently in society, statistically, obviously a large number of people, especially in Western society, deal with hormonal issues. And most of them they're not even aware are related to hormonal issues. Like polycystic ovarian syndrome, very common to see. A lot of people don't realize that manifests oftentimes due to hormonal irregularities. Here's some secondary conditions related to hormonal imbalance. I call them secondary conditions because they're symptoms, but they're not the primary issue. We're not trying to treat and manage symptoms or secondary conditions. Obviously, medicine and prescription drugs, oftentimes that's what they're trying to do. And don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for those things. But in general, we want to correct the primary issue that's causing these secondary conditions. And oftentimes that's primary issue can be kind of complex, but there are definitely things we can do to start to correct that primary issue. So secondary conditions related to hormonal imbalance, some of these are probably very familiar for a lot of you watching this. I know, and I've experienced these at some point in my life. And obviously I deal with a lot of people that are experiencing this stuff on an everyday basis. So you can kind of run down the list here. I won't name them all here, but obviously these things are very common. Look at the people around you, look at your own health, and you'll realize, wow, these things are very, very common, and they don't have to be. It's not normal. It's become normalized in our society because so many people are having dysfunctional bodies due to the things we're going to talk about here. But it shouldn't be normal. The human body is meant to be healthy. You're meant to feel good. You're meant to have energy. Unfortunately, again, our society now promotes an unhealthy body, and with that, all the secondary conditions that come with an unhealthy body. So what causes hormonal imbalance? It's a simple question with a complex answer, because there typically isn't one sole cause of a hormonal issue. Now, medicine, we like to think of things as black and white. You have this XYZ syndrome, and we'll fix it with XYZ drug or medication. Again, those things can be necessary in certain situations and individuals and disease. Everyone's unique. But in general, bodily dysfunction, including hormonal imbalance, isn't typically caused by one sole thing. It's a combination of chemical, emotional, physical stressors over the course of life. These things start to play out even when you're in the womb. We know babies and infants are exposed to man-made chemicals that mimic hormones, hormonal mimicking chemicals in the womb. That starts to affect our tissues before we're even born. We grow up, we're exposed to these chemicals, our food's processed, we drink water filled with these hormone mimicking chemicals. We have high stress, we're sedentary, all these things factor into the body breaking down over time. Now, my opinion, to begin the process of correcting hormonal balance, something we all can do because we all need to eat, is start with food. We all need to eat. We need to eat to survive. So why not eat food that optimizes the function of your body? Because you got to eat anyway. It's a win-win. And with that, you have to obviously arm yourself with the knowledge and education to eat better and to know which foods to be eating, and then to plan it out and immerse it into the daily habits of your lifestyle. That's the hard part. I can explain all day to people what they should be eating, but execution is often the biggest obstacle to people actually getting healthier. It's just hard to do. We're used to and we're conditioned to a certain way of living and certain habits, and it's hard to break those habits. All right, so this diagram here, I'm going to run through quickly. Gut-brain quadrangle basically explains the whole process of how diseases and secondary conditions develop with the body, including hormonal imbalances and hormone issues that so many females are dealing with. So on the left here, we have environmental stressors. I just touched on this. Physical, chemical, emotional stressors over the course of life are the primary causal factors of bodily disease, breakdown, and dysfunction, including hormonal imbalance. So how this plays out, in the center here, we have the human body, the brain, the nervous system, the immune system, everything the brain controls, detoxification system, liver, kidneys, the GI system, your gut, the intestines. All that is basically, think of the center component here as the human body. But the human body here in the center is exposed to these environmental stressors over the course of life. And this creates oxidative stress in the body, all these physical, chemical, emotional stressors. Combine that with malnutrition, most people eating processed foods, just simply not getting the nutrients our cells need to function optimally, you create inflammation, which over time creates different disease presentations, including many of the hormonal syndromes and issues related to that females deal with in today's society. These symptoms, again, I call them secondary conditions, So XYZ symptom, disease, diagnosis, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter what we want to label it, most often are caused by the similar, they all have similar underlying causes. These environmental stressors over time create oxidative damage to our tissues, causing inflammation, leading to different disease and dysfunction in the body. This was taken from Paul Hardy, who wrote The Autism Quadrangle, which is a very similar mechanistic explanation of how disease processes start in the body. So hopefully this makes some sense to you. Our environment causes, and malnutrition causes inflammation, which leads to disease over time. Is the simplest way to explain this. Now, talking about the gut, so step one, we want to really focus on the gut, and I'll explain here why in a second. But in general, leaky gut, a lot of you probably have heard of. It's getting to be pretty common knowledge now. Obviously, if you haven't, no worries. I'll explain what it is here. But common triggers of leaky gut we have listed up here. But in a healthy human gut, these cells here, these intestinal cells, should have normally tight cell junctions. And when those are nice and tight and regulated, our body knows to let good guys in, the nutrients we need, keep the bad guys out, chemicals, foreign proteins, bacterias, whatever it might be. Keep them out of the blood and let the good guys in. Now what happens is all these environmental triggers you see here, poor diet, processed foods, antibiotics, drugs, stress leads to more inflammation, alcohol, toxins, all these different things cause breakdown in the gut, which opens up these gaps and allows all these foreign compounds into our blood. Now when these foreign proteins and different hormone mimicking compounds get into our blood, they can wreak further havoc on our hormonal system, on all of our tissues, because then they get up to the blood-brain barrier, break that down, and create inflammation in the brain. They create inflammation in our tissues. Basically, they can go into any tissue in the body once they're in our blood and create inflammation, which leads to autoimmune types of responses. So our immune system starts attacking those cells and tissues that have been contaminated with all these compounds that have gotten into the blood due to the breakdown of this intestinal barrier. And this also leads to malabsorption and nutrient deficiency. So it's a negative compounding effect on the body because these foreign compounds bind to nutrients, and oftentimes we need nutrients to break them down. So it just zaps us of our energy, literally. So this is the process of the gut breaking down. So signs you have a leaky gut or a leaky brain. We've all probably experienced these at some point in our lives, but if they become chronic issues, that's when you know your body's really, really struggling with leaky gut or leaky brain. So bloating, gas, cramps, you can go down the list here, and here's all the hormonal issues that come with that: PMS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, anxiety, depression, mood issues. Once that brain's inflamed, you get more complex systemic issues. And this is all caused from all these XYZ symptoms and secondary conditions, all related to the same underlying cause of the gut breaking down. So when I say it all starts in the gut, I mean everything. So headaches, migraines, again, XYZ symptom you want to list off here: hormonal imbalances, fatigue, obviously very common issues many people are dealing with. Even when you sense pain, they're all related to the condition and health of your gut. And that's why talking about how do we optimize nutrition of the female body, really at any age, but especially as you get into adulthood and towards your menopause years and beyond, it always makes sense to start with looking at the health of your gut and what's affecting your gut. And then we can, once we restore integrity and health of the gut, look at different nutrients and foods and supplements, whatever it takes to start to build health in the body. Because if you don't have a healthy gut, you want to absorb foods, nutrients well, and then a lot of times we won't be able to utilize those nutrients once they're in our bloodstream too. To go along with that, in our environment, we have endocrine disrupting chemicals. So these are chemicals that have obviously been man-made, pesticides, things in children's products. You can go down the list here. All these different materials we're exposed to on a daily basis, people don't even realize, mimic hormones in our body and can also cause nutritional deficiencies, Nutrients combined to them also require nutrients to break them down and to detoxify from these substances. But basically, you can think of these things that get into your blood. They combine to your thyroid, combine and gum up to your joints, to your kidneys, causing all sorts of dysfunction and irregularities of the hormonal system. All right, so starting with healing the gut now, I want to talk about, okay, so what do we reduce, eliminate? What are the enemies we get rid of to start to heal leaky gut and start to heal the gut? And then what do we want to start to add in as far as nutrient-dense foods? So top 7 here, this was taken from Dr. Axe. Gluten and most grains, these are all inflammatory and cause leaky gut. Sugar, artificial sweeteners, things like diet sodas, candies, conventional meats, conventional dairy, refined vegetable oils, GMO foods, tap water, pesticides, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, antibiotics, skin, hair cleaning products. Those are all those environmental products we just looked at. All these things cause inflammation and trigger leaky gut. Conventional meats and dairy, the way they're processed, the way they're produced, the foods that the conventional animals are fed are the reasons why they're more inflammatory, can cause distress to the gut. Or dairy, for example, pasteurization and homogenization completely denature the proteins and the fats, which makes them tough to digest and can cause inflammation in the gut. So it just, in general, want to avoid these things on the left. Now, the things we want to start to put into our bodies to start to heal our guts, start to get good nutrition in our system, are things like bone broths and organ meats, which are very high in micronutrients, amino acids that help to seal that gut lining, cultured organic dairy, raw ideally. This will leave the proteins and nutrients intact, beneficial bacteria intact, and that starts to build a healthy gut and keep the gut non-inflamed. Fermented vegetables, same thing, high in enzymes that help the gut. Coconut products have good fats that fuel the gut cells. Sprouted seeds, same thing. The reason we want them sprouted is because they're more easily digestible, and when we sprout seeds, we neutralize things like phytic acid, which are antinutrients. They bind to nutrients and prevent their absorption. Organic grass-fed beef and lamb, high in good fats, and same with wild-caught salmon. So in general, you want to be consuming more of these on a regular basis. Make it a habit to putting these things into your body, and make it a habit to avoid these things on the left that cause the leaky gut. Specifically talking about estrogen, obviously estrogen is, both males and females have estrogen, but females it tends to be higher, obviously, in a normally functioning female body, and progesterone is another common. But in general, estrogen levels start to go down as females get to that menopausal age. But this chart I like just shows how much nutrients affect estrogen and the metabolism of estrogen and the regulation of estrogen. So if you're getting deficiencies in really in any one of these nutrients, or you're not getting good balance of all of them, potentially it could throw your estrogen levels off and over time create non-optimal estrogen status in your body. And this is also why when it comes to nutrition, my philosophy is we should always be getting a balance and a spectrum of good whole foods. And when we supplement, we don't want to just take an isolated nutrient for a long period of time. In my opinion, that's not the best strategy. We want a multiple spectrum of nutrients for the long term. Basics of a healing diet. Really a key to a lot of it is, in general, eliminating and reducing sugars. I don't mean all sugar, basically added sugars, because we want to get those down because those are inflammatory to the gut. Also create a glycemic response, so elevate insulin, which can eventually create advanced glycemic end products, which are oxidants of the body. So in general, what I mean by that is sugar creates inflammation and can throw off our hormones if we consume high amounts of it for a long period of time. Carbohydrates in general, we want to eliminate grains. They're inflammatory, generally speaking. Sugars, fruit, except berries, grapefruit, and Granny Smith apples, because those don't produce a huge blood sugar spike like other fruits. Even healthy grains turn to sugar and can feed pathogenic bacteria. So in general, if you're dealing with a lot of the secondary conditions that we looked at previously, I would recommend getting off all grains for at least a period of time to get your body to a more healthy state. Protein, moderating your intake of protein. We don't want to consume too much because excess protein turns to sugar. These are some general guidelines listed here. And then fats, one of the most important nutrients for our hormones. The precursor to hormones is cholesterol, which is a fat. So we want to increase your intake of healthy fats. Choosing better carbs, we touched a little bit about this, but eliminating all grains, at least for the time being, avoiding anything white bleached, flour enriched, refined. Those things turn to sugar, create an insulin spike, mess up our hormones, also create inflammation if we consume too much for too long. Pastas, rice, potatoes would all be included in there. Eliminating all excess sugars, including fruits, except maybe berries and grapefruit and Granny Smith apples like we talked about. This is if your blood sugar is completely out of control. If you're otherwise in a healthy metabolic state, not dealing with all those different secondary conditions, if you can get your body to that point, then there's a time and a place to include, potatoes and whole food carbs more commonly in your diet. For example, on days I work out, have a good workout or I'm moving a lot, I'll maybe have some potatoes at night or some other healthier carbs mixed into my diet. So other better quality carbs, broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus. In general, my favorite carbs to include are root vegetables and seasonal berries because they're the easiest on the digestive system. So even broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, kale, those types of things have oxalates and sulforaphane and different chemicals that can cause digestive distress. And those things also have oxalates and things that can bind to thyroid and cause hormonal imbalances in the body. So in general, root vegetables and seasonal berries are your best carbohydrate sources. With fats now, fats again are so important for the hormonal system for the female body, helping regulate that system, the immune system. So the bad fats we want to get rid of, replace with good fats. So the bad fats in general are canola oil, cottonseed oil, corn oil, safflower, sunflower, soybean oils. Very common in processed foods because they're so cheap. Good fats, avocado, coconut oil, eggs, yolks from pastured hens, olive oil used at low temps because it's not stable at high heat. So I avoid cooking with olive oils. Grass-fed, full-fat, buttered dairy. I've seen a theme here. We want full fat. Avoid low fat at the grocery store. We want full fat. We need fat to burn fat. We need fat for our hormones. We need fat to heal our gut. That's why we want full fat, ideally from grass-fed animals, because when they eat grass, they have a higher nutritional profile, so they're more nutrient-dense tissue and milk and dairy and all those things from animals that are fed the correct diet. Organ meats are very nutrient dense, some of the most nutrient dense foods you can consume: wild caught fish, salmon roe, sprouted seeds, pastured poultry, and pork. So the biggest thing to take away from this is you want quality sourced foods that haven't been processed. These cheap seed and vegetable oils are heavily processed, whether with chemical solvents or using high heat methods. Destabilizes those chemical compounds, creates inflammation in the body. One of the biggest contributors, in my opinion, to rising heart disease are the bad fats, not the good fats. Talk a little bit more about cholesterol and saturated fat here in a second, but it's the bad guys here that are more causing inflammation and leading to cardiovascular issues, not the good quality whole fats that are unprocessed and undenatured. Again, a reminder, removing all added sugar from your diet is important. Sugar can be hidden in a lot of foods we don't realize as well. A lot of times we don't think, oh, I don't consume much sugar, but it's in things we don't even realize. So obviously a big component is the soft drinks loaded with sugars, but all these hidden sources we don't even really think of that have a good amount of sugar. Like your low-fat yogurts. I have so many patients that come in and they're eating low-fat yogurt. Obviously they're thinking eating low fat's better for them, which is not true, but it's high in sugar. So obviously the fat is what makes it taste good. They put a ton of sugar in it to make it palatable. Not good. A lot of the nutrients are also depleted in it when you remove the fat. Ketchup, mayonnaise, all these different things, obviously commonly consumed. things like lunch meats, pizzas. And the reality is, though, there's alternatives to these things. We don't always have to eliminate them completely. We can have good quality meats, not packaged meats. Pizza, you can make homemade pizzas with sourdough breads or cauliflower crusts. Same things with sauces and breads. Most breads people think is a whole food and unprocessed food, but most breads are processed. They're stripped down to basically nothing, and it's almost like consuming sugar with the glycemic response you get from them. Same thing with soups. Basically, go down the list here. If it's processed, a lot of times there's added sugar in it. It's best to be making these things from scratch from good whole food ingredients. When we look at white breads, white rice, white pasta, has a sugar-like effect in the body, breaks down into sugar in the blood and creates that glycemic response, which can create oxidative damage, which can create inflammation, which can contribute to hormonal imbalances and all sorts of different inflammatory secondary conditions in the body we talked about. Here's a smoothie. I like to just share an example of what I like to try to eat habitually or on a regular basis. Superpower smoothie. I use organic frozen berries. I use full fat, remember, full fat kefir and yogurt that I make from raw milk that I get from a local farmer. I also use raw egg yolks from pastured hens. Pastured hens. If it's a pastured hen, and obviously people, the big fear is raw milk, raw dairy. It's dangerous. It's going to make me sick. If it's quality, rest assured, very, very, very low likelihood that that happens. The data actually shows more likely to get sick from the processed dairies and conventional eggs than you are from good quality raw milk or raw egg yolks. I consume these things regularly. I give them to my kids, my wife. I mean, this is the bulk of our diet, eating these things regularly. And when we look at the nutritional density in these foods, very, very high in a spectrum of different nutrients: vitamin A, vitamin D, B vitamins, choline. You can go down the list: zinc, magnesium, all those different things. I add in collagen protein powder and a little bit of stevia to taste to sweeten things up if you wanted to do that. But this is a great way to get a ton of nutrition, very nutrient dense, into your system in a short amount of time, which is great for fat burning and hormonal control. A little bit about cholesterol. Cholesterol is a big topic conversation in the office. A lot of times people fear it, but in general, it's a myth that cholesterol causes heart disease. It's the oxidation of cholesterol that causes heart disease. This process occurs over time. Now, there's special conditions where people can't metabolize or break down cholesterol normally, but that's very, very rare. It's a genetic condition. And obviously your doctor would be able to help you determine if that was the case for you. But for most people, cholesterol is a super nutrient. It's very important. So to cut it out of your diet is very dangerous, in my opinion. It can lead to bigger hormonal issues, mental health issues, because cholesterol is a vital component of the cellular processes of the hormonal system and of the hormonal tissues and really every cell in the body. It needs cholesterol. So what oxidizes cholesterol? Sugar, bad fats, toxins. We talked about all those in the previous slides. More people, this is what the research showed, more people have heart attacks with normal cholesterol rather than elevated cholesterol. So normal is defined by who? By different health organizations, doctors, and we lump everyone into a range of normal. But the normal range is showing to have caused more heart attacks with people rather than an elevated cholesterol. You can look up research. This is just a snippet of a lot of different research showing this. There's a higher death rate, higher mortality associated with lower cholesterol rather than with high cholesterol. I tell people this a lot, and it's hard for them to swallow and accept, but we're so brainwashed into thinking that cholesterol is this villain that's out to kill us in our food, and we need to avoid everything with food. Avoid everything that has cholesterol in it. Just not true, and it's causing more harm than good, in my opinion. More truths about it: statin drugs lower cholesterol, but do not significantly decrease the incidence of heart attack or stroke. Small decrease in some of the studies comes from an anti-inflammatory effect. So again, what we talked about earlier, inflammation is the issue. It's not cholesterol. Statins cause heart failure due to depletion of coenzyme Q10. That's just one nutrient. Coenzyme Q10 is vital for heart health. There's a lot of other nutrients that statins also deplete in the body or can cause deficiencies in over time. Statins have also been linked to liver problems and joint pain. I've had many patients who I'm working on who are on statins don't really fully recover and get better till they talk to their doctor and start to minimize the statins that they're taking. And then it's almost like a night and day difference when they start to either get off of that or decrease the amount they're taking. So this is all from the New England Journal of Medicine. All right, lastly here, we're going to wrap things up. Complementary lifestyle additions. And Kevin does a great job with this stuff, worked with him personally. But in general, just move. We need to move. Our body's meant to move to facilitate nutrient exchange, to facilitate detoxification, transfusion of nutrients into our tissues. So we're good for producing brain chemicals that allow us to feel good and be happy. So swimming, biking, jogging doesn't have to be long and monotonous. Try to mix it up. Do some burst training, Tabata training. Try out different gyms in your area, and find a time that it fits into your lifestyle so it's fun and uplifting. It shouldn't be emotionally draining. Now, to change your habits and start to implement it can be tough initially, but when you start building these into your lifestyle, you're going to become addicted to moving because you know and you're convicted in how good it makes you feel. And again, it doesn't have to be hours. Most of my workouts, on average, I'm working out 4 or 5 times, dedicated workouts a week, and it's definitely less than an hour. Now, those other days, I'm still trying to be active, but I'm not necessarily going to the gym or doing a dedicated workout. I might be outside raking leaves or just going for a walk. Just moving the body in general is so important to help facilitate the normal healthful processes of the body. Other things we can do, complementary things, improve your vagal tone. What I mean by that is there's a nerve called the vagus nerve in the body that puts our body in a more healing and restful and repairing mode when it's stimulated. That's the vagus nerve. So maybe you've heard of the sympathetic nervous system or the parasympathetic nervous system. In general, we want to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. When we're in a more parasympathetic state, meaning we're increasing our vagal tone or improving our vagal tone, we're in a more restful, relaxed, healing state. So you can go down the list here. All these things I try to do on a regular basis. Obviously, as a structural chiropractor, a lot of research is showing that structural chiropractic care removes interference and stress on the spinal cord and the spine, stimulates the vagus nerve, puts us in a more parasympathetic, relaxed, healing state within the body. And so I don't view nutrition or any of these things as a silver bullet solution to my secondary XYZ issue. I try to include a spectrum of all these things: good diet, good lifestyle behaviors on a regular basis. And over time, your body will start to heal and function better. As you restore health in the body and support your body's healthful way of functioning, you'll see it heal and those secondary conditions be minimized and hopefully eliminated over time. Got to be patient with the healing process of the body. So again, going back to the philosophy of salutogenesis that we work with in my clinic, it's just recognizing the intelligence in your body. I mean, look at these amazing facts of the human body, what it does, and really your brain communicating with there's a communication between your brain and your body, signal from your brain down your spine through the spinal nerves to every cell, organ, tissue in your body. And that network of communication, that electrical system, is what regulates the health and repair and healing of your body. And we got to respect that system, and we got to support it in every way we can in order to achieve and maintain health. And so if we can just support that system with everything we talked about here in this webinar, you give your body time and it's going to heal. It's going to function better. Now, obviously, everyone's unique, and some people have really unique situations. You need to work with your doctors to just come up with a plan and to execute it and have people hold you accountable. But if you do these things regularly, with time, your body will heal and function better. So it's that power, that innate intelligence. Obviously, when at the moment of conception, 2 cells create a multi-trillion cellular organism, and it's all done without us thinking about it. There's just an intelligence in the human body. And again, we recognize that, we support that intelligence, we create health in the body, we minimize and heal from those secondary conditions that so many people are dealing with, so many females, those hormonal issues, and all those other secondary conditions associated with chronic stress and inflammation. So philosophies, again, treatment and prevention. Generally speaking, the medical model is more reactive. We wait around, we live our life, not really caring about the effects of our environment and our diet on our body. And when we have an issue pop up, we go get a medication. A lot of times those meds do what they're intended to do. They temporarily can help us feel better, but so many people are chronically on medications. And if you're on a medication, you have to ask yourself, am I healthy if I'm on a medication? Generally speaking, no, because there's a secondary condition that's going on that's caused by that underlying primary condition. And you haven't fully addressed that, so you have to keep taking medications. Not to say, again, there's a place for those things, but in general, a more proactive, salutogenic type of philosophy or lifestyle will help minimize the necessity of relying on a reactionary approach like medicine. And we need to start teaching our youngsters, and our parents, obviously, how do we support the body? How do we allow the body to maintain its health, which will therefore minimize dysfunction over time? Obviously, my philosophy is more this proactive, salutogenic style, and I'm hoping to get other people to see that that's a more optimal approach to living a life of longevity and function, being functional for a long period of time. So start taking action. Really, like, all this information is useless if you can't apply it. You have to sit down and really think about, okay, how am I going to start to implement piece by piece these different things, these nutrients, and avoid the different environmental chemicals that are detrimental to health. And if you have any questions, please feel to reach out to me, drjohnarns@gmail.com. Our practice website is www.completechiroMN.com. Be happy to discuss anything if you have further questions on any of this information, or just want to discuss something. I'd be happy to help you. Otherwise, good luck to you all. Wish you all good health and empowerment. You have control over the health of your body. And I wish you success in achieving health and maintaining it. Thanks for listening.